I think that's like dealing off the bottom of the deck. I'm not sure.
All right, well, maybe we'll get started. Steve, I don't know if you want to hit that record button.
Thank you. I am recording.
All right, so good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Hopkinton School Board meeting for Monday. To catch myself, today's Monday. So Monday, August 10th, 2020. With us, we have a full board this evening with Norm Gupel, Rob Nato, Andrea Folsom, Seth A-Frame, and myself, Jim O'Brien. And we are also joined by Superintendent Steve Chamberlain and Michelle Clark, our Finance Director. So I just want to kick off by talking about a little bit about the purpose of the meeting before we get into the Pledge of Allegiance and everything else. So tonight's meeting is really on one topic. So this is a statutorily obligated meeting. That's kind of fun to say, for the school board to present and have a discussion about what is going to be on the ballot for August 15th. And so we're going to have a conversation about changes to the meeting rules that came about through House Bill 1129, and then a discussion on the proposal that the school board is putting forward for an amendment to Article 3. So that's our two agenda items tonight. The way I hope to facilitate the meeting is we'll do the House Bill 1129 and the changes to the meeting rules first, and then I'll open up public comments on that topic if people have comments that they want to make. And then we'll move on to the presentation of the budget and the amendment to Article 3. And then we'll open up for public comment on that article and then adjourn the meeting following that. So with all that said, sort of kick off the meeting, why don't we start with the Pledge of Allegiance? And Steve said he found a flag for us.
Do you see a flag?
I see a rainbow.
You don't see the flag, huh?
No.
What's going on here? Hold on one second, because I found a beautiful flag.
It showed your desktop.
How's that?
That is it's 4 flags.
Is that better?
That's perfect. Thanks, Steve. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we are meeting today virtually. There is no physical location. Oh, you can't see myself. There we go. There's no physical location for this evening's meeting. We're able to do that because of the governor's emergency declaration and emergency orders that allows for public bodies such as ours to operate fully in a remote environment. And so the governor in his emergency orders and declaration waived certain provisions of RSA 91A, which is the state's open meeting guidelines. And so normally a quorum of the board needs to be in a physical location, but because of the pandemic, we're allowed to operate completely virtual. With that, we have the ability for the public to not only listen and watch the proceedings, but for those who are joining us on Zoom, they're also going to be able to participate by providing comment. And so we have telephone number access as well as Zoom access. So with that, we are going to begin with a very quick, I think, presentation on changes to the meeting rules per House Bill 1129. And so if folks will bear with me. Steve, can you, oh, maybe I can share. Yes.
You good?
I'm good. Or can folks see it's a pretty ugly PowerPoint presentation. I apologize. It's pretty utilitarian. So what I'm going to talk about are the changes to the meeting rules per House Bill 1129 to sort of set into context what we're going to be doing this week. So I thought I'd start by just taking a little bit of a backtrack just so we can remember where we've been. So we all remember it was actually on Friday, March 13th, but our original annual district meeting was set for March 14th, in which we would vote on the budget and warrant articles. That meeting was postponed by the district moderator. With that postponement, he later on set a date for a meeting in which for the town to come and vote on those warrant articles. So in the lead up to that vote, we had two information sessions, the first on May 12th and the second on May 15th, in which the board presented the articles and then also provided for the opportunity for the public to provide comments and amendments. And so on the 16th, on Saturday the 16th, the town did our first drive-through voting on those warrant articles. The first question was on the meeting rules. And if everybody remembers, the moderator had I would say extensive meeting rules that went along with the votes for how those would be conducted. So those meeting rules passed. And then for the operating budget, Article 3, we had a series of amendments, and you can see them all here under motions 1 through 5, ranging from a decrease to the proposed budget of about $1.8 million to an increase of the budget of about $200,000. As we all know, because we're here this evening, all those motions failed to get a majority vote, including the proposed operating budget put forward by the school board. Other votes taken that evening, Article 6, the contract for the teachers, and Article 8, a contingency fund. Those did not get a majority vote, and those two articles failed. And then Article 6, the Teamsters contract, Article 9, the repair and maintenance fund, and Article 10, Special Education Trust, as well as Article 11, the Vehicle Maintenance Trust. All those articles did pass on May 16th. But because of the failure of a majority on the operating budget, the moderator announced the May 30th would be the next vote for the town to come together for a vote on an operating budget. So on May 27th, the Hopkinton, the Budget Committee held a joint meeting on which a presentation was made on a new number to be brought forward for that vote on the 30th. That became motion 6 on Article 3. So on May 30th, the second round of voting happened at the high school on Article 3, Amendment 6. And once again, that budget article failed to get a majority of votes. So at the conclusion of the May 30th vote, the moderator announced that August 15th would be the next community or next vote in Hopkinton on Article 3, on an amendment to Article 3. So during June, the board explored budget options, had a lot of conversations, had many meetings, including the impact of a flat. And our next presentation will dive much more deeply into that. So I will just, in terms of our process, how we got here, I'll just mention that on July 2nd, that the school board voted on a new budget number that will be for Article 3. And then on July 10th, the Budget Committee voted to support the budget number as presented. Again, we'll have a presentation that dives more deeply into those numbers. The other new thing that happened on July 10th was that the Governor Sununu signed House Bill 1129 into law. And so that brings us to what is House Bill 1129 and how does that impact the proceedings here this week on the next budget vote and on our voting on August 15th. So what I just did here is for the next couple slides, the next few minutes, I'm just going to walk us through House Bill 1129 and what it says and how the board has responded to that, to those changes to our procedures. So if you all remember, as we operated for the first two votes, we operated like it was a traditional town meeting, although it wasn't traditional. We were doing it virtually, but the moderator set the dates, the moderator set the warrants, for how we would vote. And so the legislature and then the governor signed a new way for school districts that can't hold our traditional town meetings due to COVID-19 to put a process in place by which we could hold these virtual meetings. So the first piece is that the governing body, that's us, so the school board is the governing body here, will host a live virtual meeting information session during which the proposed school district meeting procedures shall be outlined and the warrant articles discussed. So that's what we're doing here this evening, August 10th. We're meeting to our first virtual meeting to discuss those two issues. The statute also asks that at least 7 days prior to today, that a notice shall be mailed to all an annual meeting pursuant to this section. So everybody, we did one better. Rather than send it to all registered voters, we actually sent it to all households here in Hopkinton. And that was, I think that was compiled on July 31st and then mailed and received in households starting August 1st. And then after the live virtual session is adjourned, so after today's session is adjourned, questions and comments from the public shall be solicited and received via electronic mail, voicemail, text message, or by other electronic means. And so we have set up an email that you can see here on the screen and a telephone by which we will take questions, comments from the public. The next section of House Bill 1129 requires that within 7 days of today's meeting, of this information session, that the governing body shall hold another live virtual meeting to consider and address the comments that we received from the public. And then the governing body, that's us again, the school board, will discuss, debate, and be permitted to amend the posted warrant. So that's a change from how the district has done the first two rounds of voting. As I said, the first two rounds of voting, that was up to the moderator. But the changes to state statute now requires that the school board be the ones to amend the warrant moves forward. And so again, I just showed here that meeting, that required meeting is going to take place on Thursday, the 13th at 5:30, and then voting will take place on August 15th. The next section says that the voting on the final warrant articles shall be by secret ballot cast, and again, through a means that provide for social distancing. And again, we're getting pretty good at this at this point. So that will take place on August 15th from 8:30 a.m. to 2:00 p.m. at the Hopkinton Middle High School. The second piece or second sentence here is about SB2, which does not pertain to Hopkinton. And so the first question on the ballot, which is sort of why we're doing this presentation, the first question on the ballot is by statute, we have to ask whether or not voters approve these optional meeting procedures. So it's important to note, just like the other vote that we had, our first vote in mid-May, that if this first question, if the voters don't approve the meeting rules, then the rest of the votes on the warrant will not be effective, and they will be disapproved. And so our hope is that the voters will approve these changes to the rules that statute is governing us to make. And then this last part says that if either the rules are not adopted by the voters, or if the article is voted down, the governing body, being the school board, has two options in that case. We can have another meeting before September 1st in order to adopt an operating budget, or that the school board can elect to deem that the meeting has adopted the previous year's operating budget moving forward. So the question one, the first question that's going to be on the ballot reads as follows. For the remaining portion of the 2020 Hopkinton School District meeting, are you in favor of modifying the school district meetings procedures from those approved on May 30th, 2020 to those set forth in the New Hampshire legislature's adoption of and the governor signing on July 10th, 2020 of House Bill 1129, Chapter 8, Section 3. That is the section that I just went through over paragraph by paragraph. It's important to note that this vote will not apply to, alter, or reopen decided articles, and will only apply to the vote of August 15th, 2020 in the required school board meetings and mailings. So that means that, we're not going to move backwards, that those votes on the earlier warrant articles, those that passed and those were defeated, are not up again for vote. That these changes to the rules are binding for the vote on August 15th, and any votes thereafter, should we move forward with additional votes on the warrant. With that, maybe I'll stop sharing screen and I think any questions or comments from those in attendance on what we're asking, and what I guess the change in statute is asking us all to do, which is vote in the rules that are outlined in House Bill 1129 as our first vote on August 15th. So if you have a question or comment, if you just go down to the bottom of your screen, there should be a raise hand feature. And if you click on that, we can call on you and allow you to unmute yourself and provide a question or comment. And I'm not seeing any hands raised. And so I'm going to take that as a good sign. And so we'll move on. Thank you very much for bearing with me. I know that wasn't the most exciting presentation, but hopefully it was thorough and at least understandable. So our next agenda item is presentation on the proposed amended Article 3. And for that, I am going to turn it over to Rob Nato to walk us through what those proposals are. So Rob, thank you.
Sure. And just in terms of the voting procedures, it'll be pretty much set up the same as before. 8:30 to 2, just remind folks that the biggest mass of voters seems to be in that first 90 minutes. So however you choose to vote, that's up to you. Just know that that's when it's busiest. Steve, can you share the spreadsheet on the screen? So everyone,
is that the one you want?
that's the one. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So hopefully everyone received this in the mailer that went out last Saturday, and it is essentially outlines the changes to the original proposed budget and the impacts in various areas. So I will go through this a little bit and talk about the logic behind it and what it brings us. And then I think we'll open it up to questions. That might be a better way to go than diving into other areas, because I know people might have other questions. And Steve, that just disappeared on my screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. Is that better?
There it is. It's back.
Sorry.
That's okay. So after the second round of voting, that budget was defeated. We had a board meeting on the 18th of June, and we had asked Steve to expand beyond what was necessary to get to a flat budget. And that number is about $864,000. But we wanted to see all the options that were on the table, and that brought us into a range of 900, and let me check my notes here, $954,000. And for a lot of folks and everybody on the board and in the community, that was a little bit of an anxiety-provoking meeting. We talked about a lot of things that people typically don't have to address here in Hopkinton. But it was necessary for us to wrap our heads around where we were at and how we were going to get to that flat budget if that were to pass at some point. Before the next board meeting, I sat down and thought about some of my perspectives on the budget and what schools should be doing. And I simply took that list of 900 and some odd $1,000 and started to identify things as what I would consider administrative or ancillary or supportive to the school process, but not specific to student programs. And I had it in a spreadsheet with the little ticker going down on the bottom. And as I went, the number got more to where I thought people might be willing to say yes to, and that would support education the way that we would like. So what you see in the blue column is the list of things that were reduced as that function. So I don't want to spend too much time here because it might be redundant to what you already know, but salaried staff, the elimination of additional days for individuals, that's situations where an employee might have received more hours, but the decision was made not to make that happen. Some insurance reductions that we realized, support position at the middle high school that we felt that we could do without, and some staffing changes that also resulted in some savings. We looked at reducing technology at the time, and this was before we had some fund balance money that allowed us to purchase some tech for our COVID situation that we're in. Supplies in a variety of departments were reduced, and then there was some savings from heating fuel, propane. The tech department restructuring, which was a kudos to Matt Stone and Steve for figuring out how to maybe readjust the way they do business, and some savings that were there. The Maple Street School Special Education position, which was really a very targeted position, which would, it'll impact the school, but it won't have a broad impact on a lot of students. The positions that are asterisked, the PE position, the art position, both Harold Martin and at Maple Street, those were reductions that came about by the previous board's decision to reduce a third grade position and a sixth grade position. Because those class sections are not there, those sections of PE and art are not necessary. The non-obligated curriculum development money, that number was about $30,000, and we left some there so that certain things that have to happen every year can happen, but again, some more austerity taking place and reducing that by $16,000. And then there were some savings from summer school, and also savings from the phase bonding project where we did 5 million this year, and we'll do the balance of the 4.8 million, I think, next year. So that brought us to $523,000 in cuts. As I had spoken previously, and as the board had supported, we feel really strongly that the library media assistant is an important position to make sure that those libraries are open at all times to students. So we put that back in, and that brought us to total cuts of $492,476. So again, the logic was administrative austerity, removing some ancillary support, and protecting student programs. If we go back and look where we've been in terms of increases to the 1920 budget, the original warrant from March 2020 was 4.3%. The warrant that we brought forward as a board in May would have put us at 2.53%, and this current proposal brings us to 1.8%, which in any given year would be, I think most folks in town and most boards would say, an incredible job of slowing growth. Tax impact, if we, and I want to be clear because, the last time we played a little bit of, it's still an increase. We talked about it was a negative 3 cents on the tax rate, and folks quickly came up to say that it was still an increase. Well, it still is an increase. I'm not shy about saying that. We realize that it is $370,810 increase over the previous budget, but we feel that it is money well spent on student programs, and that is the reason that we are in business. So we have that increase, and then when we apply some undesignated fund balance, and we also looked at the overall other warrant articles that were passed, and then Michelle does her magic of accounting for revenue, we end up with a 7-cent increase on the tax rate of all articles if they pass, including this budget. And what the math looks like for property owners is down at the bottom in the green box. $14, $21, $28, and $35. I heard the beck and call over the last 6 months. I don't even know if it hasn't been 6 months yet. Seems like 6 months. That people are looking for us to be more mindful of how we're spending money and growth for everyone in town. And we're also looking to folks who want to maintain our schools at the high status that they've always held. And I feel really strongly that this budget does that in some pretty difficult times. So I personally will ask everyone that's listening, and everybody who's listening is going to speak with friends and neighbors, to please support this budget. I think it's a nice compromise in a difficult time. And I will leave it there for now and open the floor to questions, if that's okay with Jim.
That's great. Thanks, Rob. So I guess if there are questions from anybody on the line, a few hands have gone up. So we'll start with S. Adams.
Oh, you have to unmute.
No, you're not. We can hear you.
You can hear me. This is Renee Adams, Kearsarge Ave. I think you've done a fantastic job on that. But I wanted some assurance that the special ed reduction, which is a large reduction, that there wouldn't be children who wouldn't get what they need.
I will speak to that as best I can, and if Steve needs to jump in, he will do so. As we are talking about special ed students, there are some HIPAA things that I am mindful of. So I will say that position was a very targeted position, working with a limited amount of students, and that the special ed staff at Maple Street will be able to service the students that are currently there to the highest capacity that they've always done that. A little bit of bias there because that includes my wife, so sorry about that.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So the next hand up is Mr. Bob Lepre. Hi, Bob.
Good evening. I have a couple of questions. First of all, what was the level of involvement in targeting these cuts by teaching staff?
I'm not sure what you mean.
How many teachers were involved with figuring out where these cuts should be?
So from the list that we looked at initially, or from the list that I used to derive this proposal?
Yeah, the final numbers here. What kind of participation in making these decisions was done by our professional teaching staff? Or was it just you and the board members?
Well, it would have been my proposal, and with all due respect, Bob, I would consider myself part of or recently a part of that professional teaching staff. I think that I'm in a unique position with having just left the high school for 22 years to understand some of the dynamics that go into what happens when budgets are passed and how they impact things in the day-to-day operation of the school. But it was a board proposal, and I brought it before the board in hopes to give us a starting place for a conversation.
With all due respect, Rob, you realize you've been a long-time teacher. I'm talking about the teachers that are actually working in the school, and they're going to have to work underneath these various proposed cuts. And so what you're telling me is you did not poll or bring into the conversation when you were making these proposals, you did not bring in any number of teachers. Is that correct?
That would be correct, Bob, but I'm also pretty sure that that's not the point where we were at as a board, where we poll teachers in terms of what they think should happen with the budget. So I understand your perspective, but I really want to kind of push back on the idea that I needed to do that to understand with teachers on the ground. When I was doing this, it had been about 9 months since I left my teaching position. And I was, as Steve can, attest to, very involved in the middle high school and the school districts and its operations. So yeah, I've got a good sense of what the folks that work in the Hopkinton School District perhaps want and need. I've negotiated multiple contracts. I've done those things. So I appreciate what you're saying, but I'm not sure that that's the way that boards operate. And I kind of feel that I was qualified to make some of those decisions, but ultimately it's also the decision of the board to support the proposal.
Can I ask
Well,
a
I
question?
thought
Can I ask a
Yeah,
question
please.
about that?
Oh, go ahead, Seth. Bob, hold on a sec.
Steve, when you put together the larger list of cuts, that's something you put together with the department chairs. Is that correct?
So the leadership team develops, and then it is made public, and we do get lots of feedback on the impact of the cuts from every component of our organization.
And everything we did was putting back money that your list proposed to cut. Is that right, Rob?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Can I talk again?
Yes, Bob,
sir.
what's your second question?
Well, it's not a second question. I just want to comment that I think it would have been wise to get together a team of the actual teachers and have a good dialogue with them about how to go down this road. And Rob, I realize you've been doing this for years, but you're not there now, and you won't be there as a teacher next year. So my second question is, I wonder just why there is not any kind of indication of any kind of cut in our intramural sports budget. I have suggested in the past that we reduce how much the taxpayers have to contribute by having a certain amount of pay to play for our students. Because first of all, the sports budget does not serve all the students. It serves the ones who participate in that. And we have to be cognizant of funding our basic education for all of our students and try to minimize what is not essentially something that's going to everyone. So my suggestion is that if you want to get back down to a flat number, that you figure out a way to subsidize the cost and expenditure of intramural sports. And I think pay to play, where the students get involved in their own fundraising, you get sponsors, all that, that's certainly a doable thing. And I think that's an important
Bob,
way to go about it.
Can I ask you to clarify if you mean interscholastic or intramural?
Intramural sports.
There aren't a whole lot of intramural sports at the middle high school. There are lots of interscholastic.
I'm talking about
sports.
the high school. I'm sorry.
Right.
I'm talking about the high school, Rob.
Okay, so we're talking about interscholastic sports between schools.
Exactly.
Okay, so there is an athletic fee for each sport currently. So kids pay for each season. I think it's $65 or $75 per student. I'm not sure the number exactly. It's been a little while. So that is currently in place, and that is a topic of discussion for down the road in terms of whether that should be increased or not. There are some upsides and downsides to doing that, but that is part of our ongoing conversation. But that does happen now.
Yeah, I'm talking about intramural sports on the high school level. It's expensive. I think the budget is something like $400,000, and I'm just looking for a way to spread that cost out amongst the participants, either through their parents paying or the students paying or doing fundraising, getting sponsors, rather than have that entire thing paid for by the taxpayer when it's in essence, it does not serve the entire student population. And I'm not diminishing the fact that intramural sports are a good thing. There's a lot of good positive aspects to it, but it does not service every student, or every student does not have that service. So that's why I think it's something that should be shared, cost shared.
Right, and what I'm telling you, Bob, is it is cost shared. That happens now.
I don't think $65 is going to cover the cost of a baseball team player or a soccer player. It's a token fee, okay? It should be more. Well, you look at what it costs. It costs $400,000 to do these sports, and I think that's even low because I don't know that has the transportation costs and that sort of thing. But I realize that some of the teachers are both teachers and coaches, which provides a second, another part of their pay separate from their teaching salary, which, so you think about that as being something that could be subsidized by the pay to play. So I'm not going to beat the dead horse, but I'm just telling you, and I think that that's something that really should be considered, and it wouldn't be that hard to implement.
That is a topic on the table down the road.
Bob, before you go, can you please state your address? Want to make sure everyone that
Yes,
has a comment tonight states their address, please.
I understand. Always forget. I'm Bob LaPria. I live on Highland Ave. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other, I don't see any other hands raised. And so is there any other comments, questions for tonight's meeting on Article 3? Roger Turcott. Good evening, Roger. Thanks for joining us. You're still muted.
There we go. Is that better?
That's great. Good to hear you.
Thank you. There's been some conversation over the last few months on taxes are too high, and I'm just still trying to wrap my head around too high for what. And I know that may sound like a silly question, but having had the privilege of living in this town for 49 years, this isn't the first debate that we've had about school budgets. So one of the things that I did is I went back and kind of tried to reminisce over the years on the battles that we've had with school budgets. And the question I asked myself was, for those 49 years, what was the return on investment that we received as taxpayers from the school system? And I would really encourage voters to think about that, because we're looking at 1 year, we're looking at one specific budget, but there's been a process that's been going on for decades where the superintendent recommends a budget to the school board, they work on it, they recommend it to the budget committee, and the voters discuss it and then vote and approve a final budget. And I think the return on investment this town has received is significant. And I think we got to keep that in mind. The other piece that I know people have been talking about are, taxes are too high. And unfortunately, my wife and I qualify for that club because our assessment went up some 47% and our tax bill went up some 23%. So I guess we paid our dues to be in that group. But an interesting thing was that since all these Zoom meetings started, I just went back and looked at some real estate transfers. And a couple of interesting things are found there. And this is data, so it's not an opinion. The vast majority of houses that have sold in the last few months in our town have sold at above assessed value. So what that means is that people who could go to Bow, they could go to Concord, probably go to Bedford, and have good school systems, chose Hopkinton knowing what the tax bill was going to be and didn't just pay the assessed amount, they paid more than the assessed value. So for us, who had to suffer the opening of the envelope to look at our assessments, yeah, the taxes, that's like craziness, right? Because it's from where we were to where we are now. But I think it's important to kind of step back and say, does the quality of our school system have an impact on the value that people place on real estate in Hopkinton when they're looking to make a decision about choosing a community? And I believe the data over the last few months, and anybody can go back and research it, says that yes, the decisions that we've made over the last, in my case, 49 years to support the school system, even though we've modified some of the budgets, and the return on that investment has put us in a position where people looking for a place to live are looking at Hopkinton, and they're looking not only to pay assessed value, but in many cases, more than assessed value. And to the folks that I know who have a concern about individuals in the process, I would just suggest this. If you can't trust the people, and I certainly do, but if you can't trust the people, at least trust the process that has given us such an outstanding result for the last 49 years. Thanks, Jim. Appreciate the time.
Thank you, Roger. And Roger, to carry forward Norm's good request, can you just state your address?
16 South Shore Drive in Kentucky. Sorry about that.
No, don't be sorry at all. Thank you so much, Roger. Appreciate it. So we have another hand up, and This is the best name. It's Galaxy S9 Plus. And so if you know that's your username, you can unmute yourself and provide your comment.
Yes, hi. This is Jeremy Freitas, 56 Old Henniker Road. Can you guys hear me? Excellent.
Loud and clear, yes.
I just heard that comment and thank you for it. Although I think with COVID, I work with a lot of real estate agents to do marketing as my business, and everybody knows that the flight from the inner city is a reality. So I think that data, while it is hard fact, is highly skewed. So you're getting numbers from New York City, you're getting numbers from Boston, and sure, our taxes certainly are, limited compared to what you would see. I would ask for a more insightful metric, which is why has our school rank dropped below that of Bow and other surrounding towns? I think that number is actually more telling to what's going on in the school rather than what is happening in the real estate market relative to COVID and a spike due to flight from the city. So could anybody speak to why our actual score in this town has gone down?
What score are you speaking about?
They rank schools. Bow is extremely high ranked. I believe it's actually number 1 or number 2 in the entire state. Hopkinton actually used to hold that high esteem, and it no longer does. So that, shouldn't be ambiguous to anybody on this call. And
I asked because the rankings sometimes come from, U.S. News and World Report ranks schools state by state. It really depends upon what you're talking about because it changes what's being measured. So if you're talking about those kinds of standings, then which are often driven by, your AP courses and AP participation, number of students taking exams, that can vary from year to year, minor ups and downs. But traditionally, Hopkinton has done very, very well on those things because we offer a lot of AP courses and we have a lot of students taking them and a lot of students scoring 3s and above. So, an oscillation year to year might be a function of how many kids took a class.
Interesting.
I don't know that we're below. Jeremy, I'd like to see the last list I saw that we were the first non-charter public school in U.S. News Report, and we were number 1 in the county. So if those have changed since the last time I saw those, I'm happy to amend my comments. But the last time I saw, we were behind, I think, a charter school, and then we were number 1 in the county. But that could be old news. So I'm happy to look at a new list, but that was my understanding.
Excellent. No, I appreciate you guys answering that. I think the home value thing is a little askew just given the situation. That was my primary comment. I don't think we should be measuring things based off of that. And I will look for that school ranking and follow up via email. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the comment. So next hand that I saw went up was Andrea Kane. Good evening, Andrea.
Hi, because I've been doing a lot of research, I just have the U.S. News in front of me, the list, and we are 3rd behind the Academy for Science and Design, which is tough to get into a charter school in Nashua, and Sunapee, which is just above. And interestingly, they spend a little bit more per student than we do, about $1,000 more per student than we do. They're a much smaller school in terms of numbers, and Sunapee is a nice area as well. But yeah, so that's just a little snippet. Thanks.
Thank you, Andrea. Appreciate it. What would we do without the internet?
Well, I just Googled it, and it's also important to know that we're middle of the pack per student in all the state. We're 15,000, right, Steve?
Cost per student.
Yeah, and we're third. We're 3rd right now behind those 2.
All right. Any other hands for comment on Article 3? I don't see any hands coming up.
And if it's okay, Jim, I'd like to put in a plug for the mailing that went out to folks, if you by accident threw it away, we answered a lot of questions right on the website as well at the hopkintonschools.org/school meeting. So if folks have other questions, I encourage them to go look there, because we've been talking about this for, a minute. So we had a pretty good idea of a lot of the questions and concerns, and we tried to address them both in finance committee meetings and board meetings, and tried to compile it down into some easy to access Q&As right on the website.
All right, so seeing no other hands, thank you, Andrea. That was a great lead-in to sort of what's the next steps. And so let's see, we sort of described them earlier, but I guess I'll just share them. So, so following the adjournment of tonight's meeting, there are opportunities for the public to ask questions and submit comments to the school board by noon on August 13th. So that's Thursday. So between now and Thursday, questions and comments can be received either via email. You can see the address here, or phone. You can leave a phone message. And then on Thursday, August the 13th at 5:30, we'll have a school board meeting. That's going to invite.
Oh, I think he froze.
I think Jim froze. Well, we'll need to get those in by noon on the 13th. And then at August 13th, Thursday at 5:30, we're going to have another meeting for us all to reconvene. And the board will have an opportunity to review the public comment and questions and make any changes to our amendment 3 or Article 3 rather, and finalize the ballot. Oh, yep, we totally lost him. And then there he is, he's back. I carried on, Jim.
Oh, you're the best. All right.
So I can just finish. On Saturday, then we have drive-through voting that we've done now 3 times, twice for the school and once for the town. It's going to be from 8:30 to 2 at the middle high school. And that process is one that you all know and love at this point, or at least you know it.
Thanks, Andrea. I blame that on my children playing video games, losing my connection. And so with that, those are our 2 agenda items for tonight's meeting. And so I want to thank everybody who attended the meeting. As Andrea said earlier, the website is chock full of information, and so has questions, a lot of information to dive deeply into the budget. So please check it out, and then join us on Thursday for what will finally be on the ballot. And if there's no other business, I will ask the board if you will join me for a discussion on negotiations, and I'll send a link for that discussion. It should be pretty quick, but I'd like to do that if at all possible. Other than that, I think we can adjourn the meeting. Unless
do we have to do a motion to go into non-public, Jim?
We don't.
We don't? Okay. All right. Just wanted to make sure we were following.
Yep. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. With that, we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much. And for the school board members, look in your emails, and I'll send the link in just a moment.